discouraged by law. 80.2% that it should be discouraged by education, but not necessarily law. 12% that it should not be discouraged by law or education. And only 0.1% that it should be encouraged. We've come a long way. Just 3 years later, in 1970, there was a KUUF General Assembly resolution to end discrimination against homosexuals and bisexuals, calling on congregations to develop sex education programs that promoted healthy attitude towards all forms of sexuality. In 1971, that happened with the creation of About Your Sexuality. That curriculum, which attempted to teach a more positive attitude towards homosexuality and bisexuality. And while I only remember some bits and pieces about it, somewhere around 1974, my sister and I went through that curriculum at the First Unitarian Church of San Diego. Even then, I recognized and was excited about the progressiveness of UUs. So in 1971, two people, the Reverend Richard Nash and Elgin Blair, co-founded a UU Gay Caucus, which later became Interweave Continental. They wanted to lobby for the creation of a UUA Office of Gay Affairs. And a couple of years later, in 1973, the General Assembly General Resolution, an Office of Gay Affairs was created with gay people staffing it, and it was a resource to the UUA. And the name has changed several times. In 1979, the Reverend Douglas Morgan Strong, called to serve All Souls Church in Augusta, Maine, became the first out gay man in the UU ministry to be called to serve a congregation. The Welcoming Congregation program is another way UUs have had a positive effect. In 1990, the Welcoming Congregation Handbook was published as a resource for implementing the Welcoming Congregation program. And most of you know that for Unitarian Universalists, a welcoming congregation means more than our commitment to be open and friendly to all who enter our doors. A UUA designated welcoming congregation has made a specific commitment to actively reach out to include people who are gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer. And KUUF began that process of discernment around issues in 1995 and officially became a welcoming congregation in 1997. And then just this year, KUUF members voted yes on a statement of inclusion that includes LGBTQ folks. And that's actually posted on the back of the sanctuary in very nice frame. I was glad to have KUUF as part of my community and support system when I came out in 2004. So the UUA has been active with marriage equality. That's an area that had a specific focus for the UUA. In 1984, the General Assembly Business Resolution affirming the practice of UUA clergy performing services of union between same-gender couples and requesting that the Department of Ministerial and Congregational Services develop and distribute supporting materials for use of those celebrations. And in 1996, a General Assembly resolution of immediate witness in support of the right to marry for same-sex couples. So in 2014, the UUA was featured as a friend of the court brief, which was submitted to the Supreme Court in the case of Obergefell v. Hodges. And this is the case that the Supreme Court ruled on and made marriage equality possible in all of our states. So as a federal employee, another way that the UUA has been actively involved over the years is especially important to me because I'm not covered by non-discrimination laws on the state level. The Employment Non-Discrimination Act to protect against discrimination based on sexual orientation was first introduced in Congress in 1994. That same year, there was a General Assembly resolution of immediate witness to support the Employment Non-Discrimination Act around issues of sexual orientation. Since 1994, INDA has been introduced many of the years, and it has still not become law. In 2007, gender identity protections were added to legislation for the first time. Before that, it was just sexual orientation. And there was a lot of divide among LGBTQ groups about whether they would support a law that did not include transgender people. That year, most, but not all, of the major national LGBTQ and related organizations signed the United Opposition to Sexual Orientation Only non-discrimination legislation. So these groups were saying that they would not support a federal Employment Non-Discrimination Act that did not include transgender people. And that same year, the UUA General Assembly had an action of immediate witness to pass the Employment Non-Discrimination Act with transgender inclusion and protection. But like I said, it's still not federal law. So in 1996, the UUA office changed its name to the Office of Bisexual, Gay, Lesbian, and Transgender Concerns to reflect commitment to the transgender community. And in 1999, the Welcoming Congregation was updated to include transgender information. And then in 2002, the Welcoming Congregation Handbook was revised again to include gender-neutral pronouns throughout the book. And that same year, 2002, the Reverend Sean Parker Dennison was called to serve South Valley UU Congregation of Salt Lake City, Utah, and became the first out transgender person in the UU ministry to be called to serve as a congregation as a parish minister. So, related to some of that, one way that you can help make KUUF a more welcoming place is to use the pronoun stickers we have available with your name tags. Some of you may have seen those and wondered what that was all about. Just like many conferences I've been to, adding our pronouns to our name tags clarifies whether we identify as male, female, genderqueer, non-binary, etc. And remember this is for gender identity, and it's something different than your sexual orientation. You're not outing yourself as gay or lesbian. It's just your identity, the pronouns that you use. The idea is that everybody does it, even if you think it is obvious to everyone based on your appearance and your name, what gender pronouns you use. If we all put it on there, it's not singling anyone out, when maybe their gender identity is not so obvious. So you can see a lot has happened since the Stonewall riots. and UUs have been right there in significant ways. I expect that as more happens, UUs will continue to be on the forefront of the work yet to be done. And I'm grateful to have all of you with me, as a congregation, as we continue the journey.